In the rugged canyons of Zion, where red rock walls rise like ancient ramparts, life clings to every crevice, every shadow, seeking respite amidst the aridity. Spring brings rebirth, but also awakens the urge to hunt. The warm air multiplies movements in every corner, and where everything stirs with new energy, two coyotes wait for the right moment among the sparse grass and the shade of the bushes. They remain motionless, every muscle ready, vibrating beneath their skin like a taut string. Their ears spin incessantly, catching the slightest whisper of the wind through the grass. His pupils narrow, transforming the darkness of the ground into slits that examine every shadow. One of them advances with measured steps on the soft earth that barely gives way beneath his paws, every muscle alert, every sense on fire. The wind carries small rustles and scents, and in them it recognizes the presence of its prey. It doesn't need to see it to calculate its position and anticipate the movements that betray it. Silence hangs over the canyon, barely broken by the rustling of the wind through the bushes. The coyote lowers its head, growls softly, and with a sudden surge strikes the entrance. The victim perceives the vibration and is paralyzed for a moment that seems eternal. She senses that staying would be a mistake because the coyote could dig to reach her. The pressure is unbearable and instinct forces her to move. Suddenly, she launches herself outward with a burst of energy, zigzagging through the grass and stones, trying to gain every inch that separates her from the predator. Their route isn't free. In nature, even escape has patterns. The coyote knows this, and this is precisely what he was looking for. A few meters further on in the exit corridor, the second coyote waits. He has chosen his position upwind, where the scent doesn't betray him, close to the ground and ready to jump while each moment stretches with tension. The rabbit flies between stones and bushes, zigzagging with desperate speed. Then it happens. The coyote emerges from the ambush with lethal speed. Its leap slices through the air, and its jaws snap shut in an instant. The screech of its prey dies down as quickly as it began as it tries to shake itself off, but is held still by the fangs that won't let go. The arid earth turns red and silence returns. Their jaws know no joy or triumph, only the hunger that guides every movement. The duo consumes quickly, tearing into the meat and taking small bites, always on the lookout for any intruders who might claim the prize. Every sound and movement around them filters into their senses, and they don't let their guard down for even a moment. Their cooperation does not arise from altruism, but from necessity. Hunting small prey consumes too much energy, and working together ensures success that would be unlikely on their own. The distribution is not chaotic. Each movement follows a silent rhythm where the one who caught first sets the pace without excluding his partner, and each gesture maintains the coordination of the duo. There are no roars of argument, only a silent understanding that guides their actions. This coordination reflects their nature as social predators, capable of interpreting minimal gestures and knowing exactly when to attack and when to wait. A vital synchronicity that allows them to thrive even in an environment where every resource is scarce. The metallic scent of blood still hangs in the air as coyotes lick their snouts and look up at the horizon. The hunt is over, but the day is just beginning. In the canyons of Zion, every shadow may hide another opportunity or a greater challenge. Today they hunted together, but not all hunts are shared. Most days the coyote turns to solitude as his most trusted tool. In the vastness of the canyons, where every shadow seems to hide life, a single body, a single instinct is enough to tip the balance between hunger and survival. As the sunlight rises after that early morning hunt, the sandstone walls turn golden and the air is filled with a dry heat that presses down on the cracked earth. One of the coyotes now advances alone and silently, while the loose sand muffles each of its steps. He sniffs the air and recognizes on the ground the trace of tiny footprints left on the reddish sand. That clue guides him a few more meters and keeps him alert. Then their ears, erect and alert, point in different directions like living antennae, capable of perceiving sounds that would go unnoticed by other species. At that moment they detect the faint movement of a rodent under the ground. Thanks to this advantage, he remains motionless and not a single muscle moves. Then, with a lightning leap, it arches its body upwards and drops violently so that its front legs hit the ground with the precision of a predator. The earth shakes, the burrow collapses, and a high-pitched screech breaks the stillness. With swift claws it digs and traps. Between its fangs, a mouse is reduced to silence. It's just a bite, not enough to satisfy hunger, but it reflects the effectiveness of an instinct honed over millennia. In fact, in spring, abundance works in its favor. The proliferation of rodents turns each capture into part of a sequence that, repeated over and over again, ends up filling their stomachs. What appears to be an insignificant dam in this fertile environment becomes the basis for a strategy that ensures energy with minimal expenditure. Further on, in a grassy clearing along the canyon's rim, he repeats this dance over and over again. This time he relies not on his sight, but on his hearing. He stands still, his paws tense, and his head tilted, concentrating on listening to the subterranean sound of a vole moving through the tunnels. Suddenly, a parabolic leap lifts him into the blue sky and drops him with enough force to collapse the rodent's hiding place. The sand explodes to the sides, and within seconds, the loot is churning beneath their jaws. It's a spectacle of cunning and economy. Quick strikes, minimal energy, guaranteed profits. But in solitude, there is also fragility. A solitary coyote doesn't have the advantage of a companion's extra eyes, nor the security of a group that shares vigilance. Every bite must be defended by itself. Every decision can be a fatal mistake. Yet in this harsh and inhospitable territory, the individual becomes a strategist, a soloist in a symphony of instincts. But that solitude is suddenly broken, and a different silence takes over, as if the air had decided to hold back. A faint murmur drifts through the canyon, carrying with it an unfamiliar fragrance that doesn't fit with the usual language of hunting. The coyote stops, his jaw still stained with dirt and blood, and his senses are tense. It is something different, indefinable and magnetic. From the shadows of the vegetation, a silhouette appears, another coyote, this time a female, who watches him with attentive eyes and a relaxed body, without the rigidity of confrontation. The male stops motionless as the air thickens around him. For an instant he weighs more than any hunt, and that moment holds something different, the threshold of a transformation. The story of the lone hunter is about to become the story of two. In the canyons of Zion, where the red walls hold echoes of ancient times, two figures stand still in the dim light of spring. The male, thin but strong, fixes his gaze on the newcomer. She watches him from a few feet away, standing erect, her body rigid and her tail alert. There are no roars or charges, just a cautious acknowledgement, a warm air filled with desert sage and the murmur of insects that herald the season passes between them. The distance closes slowly, not in a hurry, but with a calculated feeling, as if each step were a silent agreement. The approach is not linear. The male zigzags, lowers his body and turns his head at short angles, avoiding threat displays. The female measures him with movements that seem hesitant but are actually proof of her constancy. A brief gesture breaks the coldness. The male lowers his ears, emits a high-pitched yip, and takes a half-step back. The tension dissipates. Now she approaches, sniffs his nose, and the ritual begins. Between short chases and sudden breaks, they test each other as partners. Their attacks aren't ferocious, but rather tactical play, rehearsing future coordination. At a key moment, the male deposits a prey fragment on the ground, the remains of a rodent captured alone. She examines it carefully, barely bites it, and leaves it where it was. He doesn't need it, but the gesture has meaning. It's not a romantic gift, it's a demonstration of his ability to provide. Among canids, sharing food can be the seed of a bond. The female does not reject him, and with that simple act she establishes that she accepts him as an ally. From then on, clear differences between the two emerge. The male moves with rapid impulses, anticipating the action, driven by an almost excessive reliance on surprise. His anxious eyes scan every corner in search of opportunity. The female, on the other hand, maintains the calm of constant assessment. Before moving, she measures the terrain, sniffs the wind, and seeks the least visible route. She doesn't need to run first, but rather decide how and when. Their roles are not opposites. Rather, they are complementary, like two sides of the strategy that dictates survival, and their first shared hunt confirms this. Days later, moving as a consolidated unit, they advance together through the territory. There is no doubt between them, and their steps respond to a common impulse. A group of ground squirrels moves between crevices and brush covered with reddish dust, moving quickly in the golden light of morning. Without wasting any time, the male moves forward decisively, cornering the female on the left. The female stays further back, analyzing the escape direction. When a squirrel darts to the right, he gives it a strong chase, but misjudges the angle and loses ground. The female takes advantage of the gap and cuts off the path with a sudden leap, blocking the exit. The prey is trapped between the two, and a devastating bite closes the hunt. The male's mistake doesn't provoke a dispute. The female nuzzles him when she's finished, a brief gesture that dissolves the tension and affirms cooperation. In the following days, the routine reveals a building understanding. As evening falls, the two seek shelter in the shade of a rocky ledge. There they rest, with the river as a distant murmur. They patrol the banks together, marking their habitat with urine and rubbing their bodies against juniper bushes, creating invisible signals that say, "This territory is occupied." The marks are interspersed, as if their traces were already part of the same map. At night, their howls overlap in short duets. These calls not only warn rivals, but also strengthen the bond between them. But in their routine, not everything is calm, because sometimes territory has to be won by force. A shadow appears in the distance. Another lone coyote looms over the edge of the territory. The male bristles and takes a few steps forward, growling softly. The female, more practiced, circles cautiously, looking for the wind, detecting the direction of the intruder. They don't launch into a direct confrontation. It wouldn't be efficient. But at a precise moment, she lets out a short, dry howl, a firm warning. The male follows her, and their combined voices manage to scare away the stranger. The threat dissolves, and in the retreat it becomes clear who is making the decisions. As the days pass, the female begins to show subtle signs of change. She searches for more food, lingers in deep crevices, and sniffs around cavities as if gauging her own safety. Nothing is confirmed, but spring is the season of life, and the urgency of the future permeates every gesture. The male perceives this and increases his hunting efforts, becoming increasingly attentive to the routes she chooses. Could this silence be the prelude to something they don't yet understand? Spring advances, and inside the female beats a secret that changes her steps. He no longer navigates the canyons with the same ease. Now he measures each movement, chooses deeper crevices, examines abandoned burrows as if he guesses that he will soon need a different shelter. The male senses this. He multiplies his travels, returns with small prey that he delivers immediately, and warily watches the edges of the territory where other coyotes sometimes prowl. The desert demands energy and caution. The days are hot, the nights freezing. While the female cautiously gains weight, the male strengthens his role as hunter. It's not out of blind instinct. There's something deeper, an invisible tension that keeps them coordinated. She enters the shadows and seeks silence. He occupies the open air, faces the wind, and marks the earth. And soon, after a few months, the night arrives when everything changes forever. Under a star-filled sky, the female enters the crevice of a narrow canyon where the rock retains the heat of the day. The male does not follow her. He stands at the entrance, restless, his ears pricked and his fangs bared at any intruder. Inside, the silence is interrupted by small squeals, faint as threads of air. 6 damp bodies huddle against their mother, seeking the warmth of her womb. She licks them, patiently arranging them until they settle into a warm pile. The male waits outside as if he knows that this moment does not belong to him. Caught hair in her paws and retreats without claiming it. The food is now hers. The bond has transformed. They are no longer two, but a family. The following days pass in a new rhythm. The female rarely strays. The cubs, still blind, depend on her milk and warmth. The male explores further, sometimes returning with his snout covered in dust, other times with prey that he deposits at the entrance of the den. Communication between the two is minimal, made up of gestures, a brief grunt, a sustained gaze, a nudge of the snout. But it is enough to maintain the balance that both need. Danger lurks everywhere. An eagle flies overhead at midday, casting its shadow over the entrance. The male bristles, lets out a short bark, and howls down toward the plain to distract her. On another occasion, a puma prowls too close. The female presses the pups against the rock while the male patrols, moving in circles, marking the terrain with strong urine, making the invader believe that there are more of them than there really are. The strategy works. The feline retreats, and the family manages to survive another day. Time passes, and what was fragility slowly transforms into bustling life. The puppy's eyes open. At first they stumble, blinded by the light, clumsily crawling. Then, within a matter of days, they venture out. There they play, bumping into each other, growling softly in harmless fights. They jump over shadows, bite each other's ears, chase insects. It's all play, but also learning. Every stumble is a rehearsal for a future hunt. The male watches from a high rock like a proud and impatient lookout. The female, on the other hand, remains near the entrance, tolerant, letting the young ones wallow and stumble, correcting them only with a soft grunt when they stray too far. The teaching is shared between them. He sets the limits. She teaches calm. Little by little, the den gets smaller. The family takes up more space, more roots, more territory. The cubs are growing. Their fur is thickening. Their legs are still disproportionate, but the silhouette of the future hunters can already be seen. And in the stillness of the evenings, when the sun reddens the canyon walls, The young ones try to imitate the adults, raising their snouts to the sky to let out broken howls that barely hold in the air. Parents listen to them. They don't correct them, they don't interrupt. These insecure voices are part of a choir that sooner or later will find strength. Because what began with two now resonates in several young throats, and in Zion, no echo remains alone for long. The clumsy howls of the puppies who were born just days ago, uncertain, find a response in the distance. They are not empty echoes. They are adult voices, deep and firm, coming from beyond the low canyons. The family is worried. The male stands tall with his snout pointing into the wind and responds with a song that asserts his dominance. The female watches attentively while her young remain silent, as if they understand that this night brings a change. Towards dawn, the air carries unmistakable signs: fresh footprints, urine marks, hair caught in the grass. Clearly another pack of coyotes has entered the territory, and now the male patrols cautiously, leaving marks of his own to warn that he is not willing to give up. The female stays close to the cubs, alert. In the distance between reddish shadows and open earth, two figures appear. Another couple with the same attentive demeanor, accompanied by still small puppies who move clumsily behind them. The first contact is tense, with ears lowered, dry growls, and backs raised in a warning gesture. No one advances or retreats, though the tension doesn't escalate. The presence of young on both sides outweighs the instinct to confront, and without sufficient hunger, no one will risk a costly fight. The distance remains, and as the days go by, the encounters are repeated. Sometimes they are mere glances, other times a fleeting crossing of paths. Little by little, the growls fade away, and at night the howls begin to intertwine, no longer as a challenge, but as voices seeking synchronicity. What were once two separate families begins to sound like one choir. The union isn't sealed immediately, but the dynamic changes. Both pairs still have their own burrows, far enough apart to avoid collisions, but they share a large territory. Over time, they hunt nearby, tolerate each other at crossings, and even share indirect watches. Zion, with its vast geography and uneven resources, rewards cooperation, and so a fledgling pack is born. Puppies grow up surrounded by movement. When one cries, sometimes it's not its own mother who calms it, but the other. When one plays, others imitate it. Females alternate, watching over the burrows, while males venture into the ravines together. The rules are flexible, less rigid than those of wolves. There are minor disputes when the food returns, teeth clicking and quick shoving, but no bonds are broken. Necessity imposes a practical order. Cooperation reaches its clearest test when the herd turns its attention to a young mule deer. It's not a rabbit or a mouse, prey a single coyote could handle. It requires strategy, exhaustion, and coordination. At dawn, they located him near a clearing where the grass was fresh. The chase began with harassment. Two coyotes appeared, forcing him to run. Others wait to the sides, hidden behind bushes and low rocks. The deer resists, its muscles responding powerfully, leaping, zigzagging, but the pack doesn't chase in disarray. When some tire, others take over. They corner him into a narrow corridor where he cannot escape freely. The final blow comes together. A coyote launches itself onto its hind legs, staggering the animal. Another intercepts it from the side. The prey falls to the ground in a burst of dust, surrounded by fangs that bite relentlessly. The fight lasts only seconds. The deer gives in, and the herd brings him down. The feast begins right there, but it doesn't end there. Pieces are torn off and carried to the vicinity of the burrows. The cubs smell the blood and squeal with excitement, pouncing on the meat. The mothers tear off small pieces, feeding mouths that never stop begging. There are growls, warning bites, shoves, but the distribution is made and everyone gets their share. What for an individual would have been an impossible dream, for the pack becomes a certainty. In Zion, the desert is unforgiving, but it does reward strategy. What began with two has transformed into a community that shares risks and rewards. The howls that were once considered solitary now echo like a single voice from the canyon walls. The hunt for a deer has marked a before and after. The pack tests its strength, and the bond they silently forged will soon be tested in an even greater challenge, because in this land of eternal rocks and short life, the coyote's gaze is already fixed on a different prey. In the early hours of dawn, the herd advances beyond known limits. The air is different. It smells of old damp, of torn bark, of large mussels moving heavily in the distance. The youngsters, now grown, try to keep up without losing the rhythm of the adults. The founding couple leads the way, sniffing, attentive to every sign. The land here does not yet belong to them, but they walk it with the confidence of those seeking something greater. The trail is obvious, formed by deep footprints in the dry mud and broken branches at mid-height. Everything indicates the passage of an immense body that advanced calmly, and that sign leaves no doubt. This is an alpha deer, the promised prey. The male advances first, his ears tense and his muscles on alert, while the female follows closely behind, attentive to every sign that marks the way. Behind them, the rest of the pack watches and waits, attentive to their movements. This isn't just another chase. Everything they've learned so far leads them to this moment, when they must leave small prey behind and dare to take on a bigger challenge. The trail becomes more intense with each step, and with it grows a silent tension. The air thickens, as if the earth itself were holding its breath. The herd's movements become more measured, almost silent, as everyone knows they are approaching the decisive moment. The silence is suddenly broken by a metallic click. The male steps back, shaking, but his leg is caught on an invisible bar that snaps shut. A shriek of pain pierces the air as she thrashes and bites the ground in a desperate attempt to free herself, though the metal doesn't give. Blood gushes forth, staining the earth, and the deer, alerted by the noise, flees into the trees, letting its hooves clatter in the distance. The female runs toward him, panting, sniffing frantically, trying to understand what is immobilizing him. He surrounds it, pushes it with his snout, as if in that gesture he could free it. The male struggles, the trap creaks with each pull, cruel and indifferent. A few meters away, the herd stops. The young become restless, emitting short whimpers. The adults watch tensely, as if something invisible were keeping them on the edge between approaching and fleeing. Then a shot pierces the air. The roar multiplies between the cannons, ricochets, echoes, as if all of Zion were screaming. The male falls to the ground with a thud. Blood gushes out, staining the dust an impossible to ignore red. The female doesn't back down. She leans against his side, sniffing urgently, her body trembling as if she doesn't recognize the danger. There's no fear, only confusion and an instinct to stay. His eyes search for an answer in the already inert body of his companion. The second shot cuts through any doubt. The woman collapses beside him, dust rising around them both. There they remain, together, on the soil of Zion, where they were recently charting a future. The pack reacts as one with a collective start, then flees. The young run in disarray while the adults guide them with sharp shoves. Instinct drags them away without looking back. There's no time for regrets, there's no room for understanding. The gunshots still echo off the canyon walls as the group disappears into the shadows and bushes. In Zion, the animal and the human meet on a fragile edge, a boundary where every contact leaves marks and nothing returns intact. Only when the shadows of the canyon offer cover do the adults manage to stop, their ribs rising and falling in a frantic rhythm. The young men instinctively gather in the center, panting and not fully understanding what has happened. The absence of the two founders weighs more heavily than any gunshot. The silence that follows is different from other nights. There are no howls of calls or signs of return. The puppies wait, look around, whine softly, but the answer never comes. The other adult pair advances, making a decision without drama. A male in front, a female behind, surround the young and gently push them toward the safety of a deep crevice. There are no words, only gestures. The hierarchy is settled in seconds and life grants no pause for mourning. That same night, the adults begin their vital task. The female goes ahead, returns with a mouse in her teeth, deposits it whole on the ground and lets the pups clumsily tear it apart. The adult vomits up chunks of semi-digested meat, an instinctive gesture that ensures that the weakest can feed. There is no dispute, only urgency to keep them alive. The routine begins to change. Two adults set out in search of prey, while two others remain near the burrow, alert for any threats. The entrances are marked with fresh urine to demarcate the new family nucleus. On each return trip, they bring food, whether it be hares, rodents, or carrion remains found on the high trails, and everything is distributed without exception. Puppies gradually learn that every bite depends on the cooperation of the group. The following days reveal a silent learning process. During the daylight hours, the youngsters play. They chase shadows, pounce on each other, and roll in the red sand until they are covered in dust. Adults observe, intervening only when the play goes too far, a brief growl, a controlled bite on the neck. The correction is immediate, without rancor, and the game continues. It's more than entertainment, it's meticulous training disguised as youthful clumsiness. One of the young birds begins stalking insects in the bushes. It flattens out, nervously twitches its tail and jumps with exaggerated force. The others imitate him, repeating the jump until it becomes a chaotic choreography. The adults allow it. Every mistake is a lesson in distance, calculation, and precision. Because it is in these games that the skill of future hunters is forged. But not everything flows smoothly. On the harshest nights, when game is scarce, grunts arise around the remains. An overly bold cub pounces on a piece of land that isn't his. The adult female stops him with a quick swipe, her claws barely sinking into the ground in front of him. The little one backs down, the lesson delivered without excessive violence. In this flexible hierarchy, each role is tailored to the exact limits of what's necessary. As the weeks pass, the pack adjusts to a new organization. The orphans cease to be merely a forced responsibility for the pair and now become the center of everyone's attention. The adults feed them, protect them, and guide them on short excursions to the edge of their territory. The chorus of howls returns, still uncoordinated but louder than before, and yet something different is felt in the air. Young coyotes, still uncertain, join in with those nocturnal voices that echo through the canyons. They're not the only ones. In the distance, a different echo responds. It's not the dry roar of a crow or the murmur of the wind. It is another howl, deep, prolonged, that vibrates in the rock walls like an invisible presence. The pack falls silent, ears pricked, tails raised. The adults stare into the darkness, alert. The echo repeats itself closer. The young people groan, incomprehensible. In the heart of Zion, a new challenge approaches. The scent is clear and heavy, unmistakable, and moves between the rocks with the presence of a solitary hunter lurking in the shadows, a silent spectre that does not belong to its pack. The pups are pushed to the back of the burrow. They whine nervously until one of the adults lies down at the entrance, blocking the way with its body. Outside, the silence turns into a threat. Loose stones tumble down the slope. Something moves through the undergrowth with perfect stealth. The puma appears from the shadows like a materializing figure, its eyes shining with a cold gleam. It is a big game hunter, owner of a powerful body perfectly adapted to jump from impossible heights. For him, the pups represent easy prey, while for the pack they represent a future that cannot be given up. The largest adult male utters the first growl, low and sustained as a warning. He's not alone. Beside him, 3 others fan out, baring their teeth and puffing up their bodies to make themselves look bigger. They lack the individual strength to confront it, but as a group, boldness can tip the balance. The predator takes a step forward, indifferent. Its tail moves slowly, calculatingly. Then one of the coyotes breaks the silence with a sharp bark, and the others immediately follow suit. A cacophony of howls and growls erupts in the canyon, multiplied by the echoes of the rock. Sound is a weapon. It seeks to confuse, exaggerate their number, turn 6 into 20. The puma stops, analyzes, assesses the risk, but hunger drives it forward. One leap and it lands a few meters from the den entrance. The ground shakes beneath its weight. The cubs cry out from the darkness. The coyotes respond with a coordinated offensive. One launches itself directly at the feline's hind legs, biting without letting go. Another runs sideways, attacking the tail. The youngest members of the pack bark from the sides, distracting and diverting attention. The puma spins with a brutal swipe, tearing out clumps of fur, but the pack moves quickly, never staying in one place. The fight is uneven. Each clash tests the limits of the coyotes, who rely on speed and pack cohesion. The frustrated puma leaps again toward the burrow entrance, but the adult female is waiting there, blocking the way. He doesn't back down. He attacks the feline directly at the face. A desperate lunge that deflects the attack for a decisive moment. The others take advantage. 3 bodies against 1, teeth digging into tense muscles, barking that explodes into the night. The puma lets out a deep roar and shakes furiously, freeing itself. The air fills with dust and the smell of blood. Finally, the feline retreats, not out of surrender, but out of calculation. The risk outweighs the reward. With one last snort, he leaps away in mighty leaps, disappearing into the shadows of the canyon. Silence returns, broken only by the agitated panting of the coyotes. They are wounded, with lacerations on their backs and claw marks on their sides. But they're alive. And most importantly, the puppies are alive too. The pack gathers in front of the burrow. The young ones emerge slowly, trembling, and are greeted with licks that erase their fear. There's no resounding triumph, no celebration. Just one indisputable fact: they've defended the irreplaceable. At dawn, the first rays of the sun illuminate the red walls of the canyon. The coyotes rest together, exhausted, fresh scars marking their bodies. The cubs huddle together for warmth, unaware that they have survived one of the toughest trials of wildlife. The story of his parents ended abruptly, torn away by invisible forces that inhabit Zion. But the pack endured, and with it, the offspring that will continue the lineage. In the heart of the desert, where every shadow can hide a predator and every step can mean the end, survival rarely depends on individual strength. It depends more on the group, on the invisible bond that unites each member to the common destiny. And so, in the canyons of Zion, the echo of the coyotes is heard again. It's not a lament nor a warning. It's a reminder. As long as a voice echoes in the rock, life will go on against all odds. Silence returns to the canyon. The echo of the confrontation has dissipated, but the rock walls remain, motionless, eternal, witnesses to every triumph and every loss. Coyotes, like so many other animals, are passengers from a much older history, because beneath their paws, above their heads, rises a landscape that took millions of years to take shape, the canyons of Zion. These canyons are not simple geographical features, but deep scars in the Earth's crust, carved by the persistence of water and time. In Zion, these monumental gorges rise like reddish-golden walls that seem to touch the sky. Its origin dates back to a past so remote that it is difficult to imagine, since it occurred more than 150 million years ago, at a time when this territory bore no resemblance to the current landscape. So what is now solid sandstone was once the endless dunes of an ancient desert. For millennia, the wind accumulated layer upon layer of sand until the weight and pressure transformed those grains into rock, giving rise to the famous Navajo sandstone that defines the face of Zion today. Over time, tectonic forces slowly lifted the Colorado Plateau and the ground rose, leaving these rocks exposed to the power of erosion. It was then that the patient and constant work of water began. The Virgin River, a river that at first glance seems modest, became the true architect of this place. For millions of years, its current wore away the rock, particle by particle, carrying sand and sediment southwards. The water not only cut, it also seeped, freezing in winter and expanding in spring, opening cracks and widening each fracture. Over time, these small crevices became gorges, and the gorges became monumental canyons. The way these formations took their appearance is due to the very nature of their rocks. Compact sandstone is hard and durable, which is why the walls are so vertical. However, in softer layers, wear is greater, and caves, balconies, and ledges appear there. This combination of hardness and fragility gave rise to a landscape of contrasts, walls that seem impregnable, and at the same time delicate crevices where life finds refuge. Walking through Zion is like walking through an open book of geology. Each rock layer is a page that tells of a different era. Seas that once covered the region, fossil dunes that were petrified, collapses that opened new routes to water. It is the memory written in stone of a planet in constant transformation. But these canyons are not just geological ruins, they are also living sanctuaries, because as the river eroded the rock, it gradually created an environment favorable to life. Where the desert stretches out, arid and scorching, the canyon offers shade, moisture, and nourishment, generating microclimates that allow for the existence of small oases. The vertical walls cast shade for much of the day, reducing the temperature at the bottom of the canyon and creating conditions where plants such as ferns, young willows, and several species of wild shrubs thrive, protected from direct sunlight. These plants attract pollinating insects like bees and butterflies, which in turn support birds and small mammals, integrating them into a web of life that strengthens the diversity of Zion's ecosystem. The water that flows through the canyon further enhances this web of life, connecting microclimates and maintaining the humidity these species need. The Virgin. The river, though narrow, maintains a constant stream of fresh water that sustains willows, poplars, and ferns. And in the pools that form after rain, amphibians such as frogs and toads lay their eggs, perpetuating life cycles that depend on these interruptions in aridity. In addition to amphibians, other inhabitants of the canyon take advantage of the conditions created by the water and the sun. Reptiles, such as lizards and snakes, use the heat accumulated in the rock during the day to regulate their temperature, while the crevices provide shade and a safe hiding place from predators. Similarly, in river water, fish adapted to fast-flowing waters survive in a habitat that changes with each flood, demonstrating how each species has adapted to the particular conditions of this vertical environment. Even large mammals depend on these formations. Deer and foxes come down to drink on the banks, while pumas explore the narrow passages in search of prey. Coyotes, for their part, move skillfully through the territory, taking advantage of insects under stones, small rodents in the open meadows where the river widens, and cool shadows to rest in when the midday heat is oppressive. The canyon is, in essence, a vertical ecosystem. From the summit to the riverbed, each elevation offers different conditions, and each species finds its own unique habitat. What for geology is just a rock wall, for biology is a mosaic of habitats. And in all of this, water is ultimately the key to everything and the virgin. The river is not as mighty as the Mississippi, nor as majestic as the Colorado, but its constancy makes it a silent and unstoppable sculptor. When rainfall or melting snow increases its flow, the river tears away blocks of rock, widens the walls and carries nutrients downstream, shaping the landscape with a patient but tireless force. During periods of drought, its channel narrows but never completely disappears, maintaining a thread of life that sustains plants, fish, and animals dependent on its constant presence. Thus, the canyons of Zion are more than just an imposing landscape. They are the result of a balance between opposing forces, hardness and fragility, drought and water, emptiness and life. But if the rock and the river have been the architects of the landscape, who now dominates this kingdom suspended between the stone walls? Silence spreads between the walls of the Virgin River sculpted over millions of years. And within these formations not only lies an immense stage, but also reveals platforms, towers, and aerial corridors. There, where the rock seems inaccessible, a shadow claims its dominion. In the canyons of Zion, the sky is not empty, but becomes the eagle's territory. From a high ledge, the bird spreads its wingspan of more than 2 meters, and the warm air rising through the gorges lifts it effortlessly, allowing it to glide freely over the canyon. From the red rock that holds its claws, its gaze becomes essential, with fixed eyes capable of detecting the slightest movement among the dry vegetation hundreds of meters away, capturing every sign of life in its territory. From that height, the eagle dominates an entire kingdom, and every vibration in the earth, every jump of a mouse, and every distracted rabbit sniffing around is exposed to its surveillance. And right now, his attention is fixed on a lone rabbit. It moves warily, moving toward a puddle where the water glistens among worn stones. He takes short sips, stopping every few seconds, turning his head, sniffing the air, attentive to the ground. His senses alert him to invisible dangers in the bushes, but not to the predator looming over him. In the air, the eagle struggles against unpredictable currents. Its wings, propelled by enormous muscles, keep it steady. The body tilts, vibrates, and corrects itself. But the head, thanks to a unique system of tendons and balance, remains motionless, like a telescopic sight fixed on its target. That stillness is the ultimate condemnation for its victim. The moment aligns. A gust of wind subsides, the rabbit tilts its head, the water trembles in the puddle. The eagle folds upon itself and swoops down. Its body becomes a living arrow, launched by gravity with a force that brooks no error. The rabbit reacts slowly. He barely turns around when the shadow pounces on him. The impact is brutal. The eagle's talons pierce the back and close on the skull. A piercing shriek cuts through the air, brief and desperate. The rabbit kicks, throws frantic convulsions, tears the red dust of the canyon with its weak claws, but the eagle shows no mercy. It pushes down with its entire body weight. The prey's head hits the ground again and again, driven in by the pressure of its razor-like claws. The squeal turns into a gasp and then into absolute silence. The rabbit's mouth remains open, its eyes fixed as the dark blood flows out and mixes with the hot sand. There's no ritual, no pause. The eagle begins tearing immediately, ripping away the skin with a sharp tug of its beak, exposing warm, moist flesh in the merciless midday light. The predator's chest feathers are stained with small bursts of blood as it tears off strips of flesh and swallows them whole. Each bite is quick, eager. There's no indulgence, only the urgency to take advantage before other scavengers arrive, drawn by the scent of death. The scene is grotesque, violent and brief. The rabbit, who seconds before was cautiously sipping water, lies reduced to a mass of brittle bones, torn skin and exposed tendons. The eagle still holds him with its talons, as if even dead he could escape. The canyons of Zion amplify this violence. The currents that hamper the eagle are the same ones that sustain it, the same winds that give it an advantage. From these walls, the air becomes a vertical hunting ground, and the eagle is not alone in this realm. Peregrine falcons launch themselves like projectiles at impossible speeds, catching birds in mid-flight. Great horned owls patrol at night, emerging silently from deep crevices to crush unsuspecting prey with their weight. Each raptor uses rock and air as invisible weapons, perfected in a stone sanctuary that multiplies them. Here, the canyons are more than walls. They are springboards of death. What is a refuge among the bushes for a rabbit is an open stage for an eagle where nothing is hidden. Violence is inscribed in every current, in every shadow that moves across the sand. But not all of the canyon's herbivores fall under these clutches. In Zion, there is a more agile, faster runner shaped by the same urge to escape the air. An animal that doesn't just run away, but rather defies death at every opportunity. What happens when death from the air finds prey that not only runs but understands the landscape and uses it as a weapon? Between narrow walls, where the wind bounces and swirls in unpredictable gusts, a hare moves cautiously. It is not a simple rabbit. Its body is longer, its hind legs look like compressed springs, and its ears, alert, rotate like radars. Every step is a calculation. He doesn't wander, he measures. The air itself speaks to you through vibrations that your skin and bones pick up with a level of precision that only the urgency of survival can shape. From above, a bird of prey watches. It stalks with its characteristic patience, spread out against the sky like a motionless shadow. Its eyes, capable of detecting a blink from hundreds of meters away, lock onto the target. It has what it takes: wing power, musculature designed to turn gravity into a weapon, claws that function like curved blades. But the canyon isn't so easily tamed. Here even perfection stumbles. Because there are limits that no anatomy can break. The air in Zion's canyons is not docile. It twists into vortices, rises with heat, and descends in lateral gusts that can twist a trajectory in an instant. The eagle knows this well, even if it doesn't think about it. It waits for the right pause in the turbulence. It requires a clear leg for the descent, a fraction of a second of calm. When that respite comes, it folds over itself and falls. The dive is a projectile. The air whistles against its feathers. Its closed wings turn its body into an arrow. But as it crosses the barrel's midline, an invisible, brutal upward jet strikes its flank. A few degrees of deviation are enough to distort the geometry of the attack. Its claws, ready to close on the flesh, now point to a void that was not in the calculation. The hare senses it before it happens. It doesn't see the predator. It feels the air pressure shift, the shadow abruptly projected, and the instant the threat falls upon it, it does more than just run. He jumps diagonally with the force of an untied spring towards a side ledge. The movement is not straight, it is a break, an unexpected angle that forces any pursuer to recalculate. As soon as it touches the stone, it propels itself in the opposite direction, using the wall as a lever. Her hind legs transform a narrow corridor into a three-dimensional field that she masters with ease. The eagle, on the other hand, needs space to correct itself, to spread its wings and slow down the weight it is carrying. The result is immediate. The bird skims the ground with a forced turn, its talons closing in vain, barely plucking a tuft of fur. The hare has already executed a second sequence of short jumps, breaking up its trajectory into intervals that the predatory eye cannot predict. The geometry of the canyon, which denies the eagle a clear angle, becomes the absolute ally of the prey. A sharp flap of its wings saves the bird from crashing against the rock. The effort saps vital energy. Recovering from flight in these conditions requires a tremendous, costly muscular effort, which can mean prolonged hunger if the hunt is not repeated successfully. From high above, she breathes heavily, her chest rising and falling violently. There's no reward, only the echo of the wind reminding her that even an aerial predator doesn't control all the variables. The hare, on the other hand, disappears into the shadows and brambles. He has won, but not by chance. Their survival is explained by details invisible to the naked eye. Ears that pick up vibrations before the enemy is visible. A body capable of transforming energy into long jumps or tight turns depending on the terrain. An instinctive intelligence that doesn't flee in a straight line but rather breaks patterns to thwart the prediction of the fall. In the corridors of Zion, these maneuvers are no exception. They are the rule of life. The eagle hasn't failed through clumsiness. It has collided with an inevitable limit. The wingspan and power that make it queen of the air become a burden when the stage narrows and twists in untamable currents. The canyon rewards those who know how to adapt to its whims, and on that scale the hare has the advantage. The prey lives another day, but its secret has not yet been revealed. Because, beyond immediate instinct, what exactly distinguishes it from the rabbit, its closest relative? What adaptations have made it an unbeatable runner against predators that would be invincible to any other? In Zion, the line between life and death is not measured solely in claws or fangs. It is also measured in invisible strategies, in legacies that evolution has sculpted over millions of years. The rabbit and the hare, two closely related creatures, have very different histories. At first glance, they appear similar: long ears, small bodies, and ever-vigilant eyes. But in reality, they represent opposing philosophies of survival. The rabbit chose the protection of the earth, living in burrows and tunnels that branch out beneath the surface as a collective refuge. Their safety depends not on speed or strength, but on numbers, because the company of dozens of individuals hiding together acts as an invisible shield. Their strategy is clear. They reproduce quickly to compensate for the losses they suffer at the hands of predators. Each litter replaces the individuals that die, providing dozens of offspring and thus compensating for their fragility with abundance. However, that same strategy ties him to a predictable fate. When caught in open country, its instinctive reaction is to stop, freeze, hoping the predator will miss it. Sometimes it works, often it doesn't. The hare, on the other hand, chose a completely different path. It doesn't dig burrows or rely on tunnels or earth walls because its refuge is on the open ground, where the only protection is its own body. They are solitary and independent by nature, and they don't live in large groups. Their young, unlike those of rabbits, are not born blind or helpless. They arrive into the world with their eyes open and their fur fully covered, ready to move just a few hours later. From birth, every hare is designed to rely solely on itself. Its body reflects that commitment. Long, powerful legs, capable of bursting into a sprint that leaves even experienced predators behind. But it's not just about speed in short bursts. The hare can sustain a long run, maintaining a pace that tires out its pursuer. And when the chase seems to tighten, he resorts to sharp turns, high jumps, and changes of direction that break the hunter's inertia. Where the rabbit freezes, the hare improvises. Where one depends on the group, the other relies on solitude as an advantage. She's not a passive survivor. Her strategy isn't to multiply to cover losses, but to avoid loss itself. There's no quick replacement. Each individual must endure. And in this hostile terrain, with predators lurking on the ground and in the air, the hare doesn't back down. It bets its agility will be enough. The canyon offers him no protective walls like it does rabbits. He faces it as an open arena, a theatre of risk where his genetic strength is his only ally. An eagle may fail to catch it not because the hare is simply faster, but because the hare knows how to sustain the run when the air is already burning in its lungs, because it knows how to turn at a right angle when the predator has committed all its weight in a single blow. A coyote can lose it in a sudden turn when the prey becomes a shadow and the distance of 1 meter stretches into an impossible-to-bridge chasm. The hare survives because it doesn't freeze, it doesn't give up, and it always reacts with every fiber of its body. That's the big difference with rabbits. While the former chose to hide and rely on reproduction as a defense, hares chose to expose themselves and rely on their individual resilience. 2 different paths, 2 of nature's challenges. One hides and multiplies, the other confronts and endures. Zion, with its open plains between canyons, is a landscape that favors those who accept risk. The rabbit is vulnerable in these spaces. The hare, on the other hand, dominates them. Every crack in the ground is a foothold for a jump. Every shadow is a visual deception that allows you to slip away. His life is a constant negotiation with death, but also proof that boldness can be a weapon as powerful as the sharpest fangs. It's no coincidence that the hare is admired even among predators. It's prey, yes, but one that elevates hunting to a challenge. With each failed attempt, the coyote or the eagle learns the lesson that not everything is within reach, that even the most vulnerable prey can turn into a ghost. Life in this natural park is sustained by this balance, with the certainty that no victory is guaranteed, and that survival is always an ongoing game. But Zion isn't just about small, fast bodies. Larger herbivores move through its grasslands and valleys facing different challenges. Where the hare relies on instant agility, other animals must endure entire cycles of scarcity, predators, and changing seasons. The jump from the canyons to the prairies is not abrupt. It is part of the same scenario. Where narrow walls force hares and predators to dance in impossible turns, the terrain gradually opens into wide ravines and grasslands renewed by spring. In that corner of the park, the air no longer swirls in violent turbulence, but flows calmly, laden with the scent of tender shoots and fresh moisture. The landscape changes, and with it, so do the rules of survival. It's not enough to be agile in an instant, because cycles lengthen, risks accumulate in prolonged silences, and disputes over offspring are not resolved in a flash of speed, but in confrontations that weigh as much as the earth itself. In the middle of that space, a group of does gather under the watchful eye of a dominant buck. He is a stag of imposing stature. His antlers, wide like a network of hardened branches, are much more than a weapon. It is a symbol, a visible sign of his power, of the winters he has endured, and of the strength he accumulates in every muscle. The harem moves around him, eating with relative tranquility, always with their eyes on the grass and their ears attentive to the roar that marks his presence. In the distance, another male approaches, younger, less robust, but not lacking in ambition. His steps are cautious, measuring every meter. He does not immediately rush towards the heart of the group. He leans towards a female who is on the edge, further away from the alpha male. In this day and age, any opportunity can mean the difference between perpetuating the line or being completely forgotten. The female perceives the attempt, and with a sudden movement she retreats towards the group. He doesn't go along with it, he doesn't accept it. His reaction isn't just rejection, it's also a gesture that betrays the intruder to the true owner of the territory. The alpha male immediately raises his head. His antlers gleam in the spring sun, and a deep bellow resonates across the meadow, echoing like a warning. It's not an empty sound, it's a reminder of who's in charge. A wall of sound that seeks to deter before physical contact occurs. But the young man doesn't back down. There's something about the season, about the urgency of reproduction, that compels one to challenge even the obvious. He advances a little further, leaning his body, as if testing the limits of his daring. The air is charged with tension. The does stop, raise their heads, their ears spin like parabolic discs following the echo of the challenge. So, without further ado, the bodies are found. The collision of antlers explodes with a dry crack, the sound of bone against bone that expands in the silence of the prairie. The muscles tense and the hind legs brace themselves against the damp ground, so that for a moment it seems that the young man can resist the onslaught. His eyes bore into the alphas, his breathing quickening and every fibre of his body pushing with an unknown force, as if instinct itself told him that it was not yet time to give in. But the difference is insurmountable. The dominant one's weight, greater height, and the superior geometry of his antlers tilt the duel from the first second. The intruder's effort is real, but it's an uphill battle. The clash, brief but intense, is resolved in just a few moments. The alpha twists his neck with a calculated thrust and drags his rival to one side, forcing him to yield. The young man resists just enough until the pressure on his legs becomes unbearable. Then he lets go and steps back suddenly, his chest heaving and his ears pinned back in an instinctive gesture that leaves no doubt about defeat. The dominant doesn't even chase him. He doesn't need to. His authority is marked not only by his strength, but also by the confidence with which he once again stands at the center of the harem. The females surround him naturally, as if nothing had interrupted their routine. The young man, however, moves away a few meters, still panting. He didn't risk enough, he couldn't sustain the fight, and he understands, at least for now, that the defeat is definitive. In the world of large herbivores, height doesn't guarantee offspring. Having legs longer than a hare, being stronger than a rabbit, doesn't guarantee anything. Their universe is different. It is woven from invisible hierarchies, from signals transmitted in the echo of a roar, in the symmetry of antlers, in the confidence projected by a body capable of withstanding shocks year after year. Here, reproduction is not decided by the chance of a race, but by the accumulated weight of the seasons past. In Zion, spring is just beginning, and the rules that define who reproduces and who is left behind are not as simple as size or strength. There are more subtle traits, choices that don't depend solely on physical impact. Because in this scenario, what really decides a male's future? The power of their antlers, the resilience of their bodies, or the gaze of the females who silently choose which lineage they trust with the continuation of the species. The young deer retreats from the clearing with a heavy gait. His ears, drooping back and his head lowered, reflect defeat. He doesn't need a new attack to understand that the gap with the dominant male is too wide. Failure is evident in his posture. In every labored breath he still draws, its body reveals the signs of a second-line specimen. The shorter and less symmetrical antlers indicate incomplete development. The lack of proportion is not a simple aesthetic detail. Antlers are a manifestation of health, nutrition, and stability during growth. In contrast to the alpha, whose sturdy and balanced antlers inspire respect, his still look like those of an apprentice. The rest of his body also confirms this difference. His muscles are narrower, his neck lacks the robustness of the alpha, and on his flank, the remains of a dull coat from the winter can still be seen. This weakness is reflected in everything else. The energy accumulated during the cold season is barely enough to resist, but not enough to prevail over others. The wear on their antlers and the poorly healed scars complete the picture, revealing a history of failed encounters, a life that has yet to prevail over rivals or attract the attention of females. In the world of deer, these signals are impossible to disguise, and females notice more than meets the eye. They not only choose the male who wins a fight, but also the one who displays vigor in every detail. The symmetry of his antlers, the quality of his coat, the firmness of his steps, and the confidence of his posture. Biology dictates that every physical trait is a harbinger of what your offspring will inherit. This is why individuals like this one are marginalized at the edges of the herd, without access to the opportunities that define the future of their lineage. But all is not lost. The life of a young deer is also the life of patience. What is a sign of weakness today can be transformed with time and effort. As spring progresses and the pastures turn green, every extra bite of tender grass provides protein that will strengthen your muscles. The calcium and phosphorus in her diet will be invested in growing new antlers during the summer, and each season offers the chance to overtake the buck who is currently defeating her, because on the prairie there is no permanent order. Whoever reigns today may be dethroned tomorrow. In this cycle, learning also counts. Between shorter clashes with other youngsters, he'll perfect his technique and learn when to persist and when to retreat. Experience in these trials becomes as valuable as brute strength, and while today's alpha ages and loses vigor with each cycle, subordinates accumulate resilience and opportunities. Therefore, the path of the defeated does not end in humiliation. It is rather a natural stage, part of a long process in which only a few reach the top. The difference is not only in inheritance, but in the ability to persist with better food, improved health, and the experience of each attempt. This same deer may return next season as a more worthy opponent. The hierarchy is not immutable. In the valleys and ravines of Zion, each spring the competition reopens, and what seems impossible today can become reality. The young man who retires dejectedly carries on his body the marks of failure, but also the promise that nature always offers a second chance. Their destiny, like that of all creatures, is woven into the same cycle that governs this earth. The sun descends over the endless walls of Zion, bathing the reddish walls of the canyon in fire. From above, corridors carved over millions of years stretch out before our eyes, while the Virgin River continues to patiently carve, reminding us that time here is not measured in days, but in eras. This natural park isn't just a stage. It's a silent protagonist, a living organism where the rock dictates the rules and life responds with ingenuity. In this sanctuary, each species has written its own story of resilience. Cunning and versatile, coyotes adapt to every circumstance, hunting alone when necessary or acting as part of a pack when a collective strategy offers greater rewards. Every move, every decision is part of a single game of survival that unfolds throughout the sanctuary. Further away, among the undergrowth and shadows, the puma lurks with absolute patience. Master of darkness and silence, remember that the greatest predator doesn't always announce itself. Its advantage lies in waiting for its prey's mistake and exploiting it with lethal precision. Meanwhile, in the open sky, another threat dominates from above. The eagle watches with cold violence, its unwavering gaze projecting an invisible danger that only reveals itself when it is too late. Down on the ground, small herbivores face risk in a different way. Rabbits seek safety in burrows and rapid reproduction, while hares rely on speed, endurance, and daring to survive in the open. Two opposing philosophies that respond to the same challenge, prolonging life for one more day. But Zion doesn't belong only to these protagonists, since there is also a smaller world that shares the same setting and rules. Here, reptiles bask on rocks until the sun threatens to consume them, while insects colonize invisible crevices, transforming the stone into a vibrant mosaic. The snakes wait motionless, camouflaged in the canyon dust until a slightest movement reveals an opportunity to feed. Every crevice, every shadow, and every puddle are part of a mechanism where nothing is wasted, and every element plays a role in the life of the park. Because Zion, at its core, is a complete organism. The rock isn't inert, it protects, separates, guides, and molds, shaping every opportunity and every challenge. The water that winds through the canyon floor acts as the vital artery that sustains this entire ecosystem, connecting lives and transforming the rock into a home and refuge. The heat, which at first appears threatening, reveals itself to be a patient sculptor, forcing each creature to hone its skills and discover new ways to persist amidst the rigors. And yet, in the midst of this realm, there is a recent visitor, the human being. They walk along the paths, peer over the cliffs, and capture the impossible colors of the rock in the evening light. Their presence alters the dynamics. The animals hide, the echoes mingle with voices and footsteps. But even today, the domain does not belong to them. The true owners of Zion are those who learned to adapt long before, those who shaped their lives in harmony with this sanctuary. Man is a transient traveler. Zion is eternal. The day draws to a close. The canyons sink into darkness as the first stars begin to light up in the sky. High above, a raptor traces its last silhouette against the purple sky, gliding effortlessly and watching over the kingdom it never leaves. And then, from deep in a canyon, an echo breaks the silence. The distant howl of a coyote. A sound that doesn't ask permission, that doesn't seek approval. It only affirms what has always been true, that this place, shaped by time, rock and water, will continue to belong to those who inhabit it with instinct and resilience. Zion, the sanctuary of rock and life, will remain a wild kingdom, unchanging and eternal.